Hello, everybody, and welcome to the panel, How to Fund Your Research Projects. My name is Katja Lasch. You might have probably seen me in the opening. I'm the director of the German Center for Research Innovation and heading also the German Academic Exchange Service in India. We have a special, very interesting panel for you prepared on the matters on research cooperation funding. As mentioned, there is manifold research cooperation between India and Germany going on. More than 30 funding schemes are there providing financial means for cooperation projects. But there are very different schemes available. We have funding provided for German institutions, where German institutions have to apply and then can onboard Indian institutions. There is funding provided for Indian institutions, where they then could onboard German institutions, and we also have co-funded programs available in the scene where an application has to be put in India and Germany. And last but not least, not to forget the European funding schemes. So I'm really glad that we have a really valuable panel today with us who gives some useful insights into the funding landscape with the strong focus. And I want to mention that we will discuss here in this panel cooperation projects and not individual funding. This is the next session then. To give an overview on different funding opportunities and insights on processes, but also new upcoming projects and new upcoming trends. Please ask your questions in the chat. We will take them up in the discussion. And also a lot of information can be found at our virtual fair section. We might tangle a couple of programs just shortly here. Name them. You find the information in the fair. So I would like to introduce shortly our panel. So we have with us Dr. Matthias Kieselbach, Director, German Research Foundation India Office. He has been the director of the office since July 2017. And before coming to India, Mr. Kieselbach was a subject specialist for the discipline of philosophy within the Humanities and Social Sciences division of the German Research Foundation head office in Bonn. And he holds a doctor in philosophy from the University of Potsdam and also worked as a postdoctoral researcher in Berlin and Pittsburgh. So welcome, Matthias. Our second panelist is Dr. Shadaram Shivashi, who is a physicist by training and was awarded a doctorate degree in the Indian School of Mines. He has a long-standing career in science, worked in a lot of prestigious Indian institutions, but also as a postdoc fellow in Japan with a fellowship of the government of Japan. He has opted to serve the government of India at the Department of Science and Technology, but also was a science counselor for the Indian government in Japan between 2015 and 11 and 15, and is currently assuming the position of a director in the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, and he is responsible, amongst others, for the cooperation between Germany, Sweden, Switzerland, Austria, China, and Taiwan and Bangladesh. So welcome, Dr. Shivaji Shadaram. Tanja Friedrichs has been for 4 years head of sector for research and innovation at the EU delegation to India. Before that, she was working in Brussels for the European Commission in the Directorate General on Research and Innovation, Department for International Cooperation. She has worked more than 15 years on EU research and innovation policy, and she was also the member of the private office of European Commissioner Philippe Busquin for research and innovation. She's a lawyer by training and has a lot of insights on the European scheme. And as the European Union is up to relaunch a new funding scheme, the Horizon Europe program, we are glad to have you here with us to give us an insight in the European funding schemes. Last but not least, Hans Westphal, who is a senior scientific officer at the DLR Project Management Agency. He's working in the Asia division. The project management agency is supporting the Ministry of Education and Research of Germany, giving advice, but also in project management. Covered Indo-German and Indo-European science and technology and innovation. And he managed various bilateral funding schemes. And he's also here on the panel today on behalf of the Indo-German Center for Science and Technology, which is a co-funded scheme between India and Germany. So welcome to all your panelists. And I would like to kick off the discussion and would ask, and maybe we start with Tanja, to give in a nutshell, a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes, an insight what the European Union is funding and what is the focus of the funding schemes with India. Tanja, if you could answer that question.
Excellent. Can you hear? Yes. So good afternoon to those that attend from India, and good morning to those that attend from Europe. These days, with our e-meetings, you do not know where and who attends. But anyway, the first thing I would like to thank Katja Lasch from the German Academic Service DART to have associated me to this exchange of views on the panel on funding research with Europe and India, or your focus being Germany. But you give me first of all room a little bit to say what we do at European level. And of course, I heard you several times saying funding. We have all the cooperation on research and innovation that we engage with our third country partners are or with our member states and countries associated to this program, which is called today Horizon 2020, which is coming to an end and which will be followed up by the next program, Horizon Europe, for the period 2021 to 27. The funding with third countries, depending on who the cooperation with third countries, depending on who this third country is not always it's open to cooperation, but not to funding. So that is a first point I would like to make compared to the topic of the panel. Funding for collaboration research is not, we don't do that with India. We do cooperate on the basis or on the principle of co-funding. But all the programs, all the calls that we have under our program are open to participation from Indian entities, provided they have funding for their participation. That funding can come preferably from our co-funding mechanisms with the Department of Science and Technology. I work very well with the colleague of Dr. Shivash Shadaram in the DST, which is Dr. Varshney, and or with the Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Earth Sciences, depending on the topic. So all the topics, and Horizon Europe, which is a program for the 27 member states, is very broad, but in the next program, we will be funding research focusing on a strategic European agenda, which is greening the economy, digitalizing in an inclusive and human-centric way. I would say those are the two main pillars, and then a lot on innovation. But of course, there will be areas on space, and health always is an important part. But all the collaboration projects that we have, open to participation from Indian universities, institutes, or SMEs, but it has to bring its own funding. More related to what DART is doing, we also have within our framework program possibilities to have support to do your postdoc or to be in a network of PhDs. And if that is done in a European university, the funding would go to that European university or institute, and through that funding, then the Indian researcher scholar can be funded by us. It's what we call the famous Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions. And then, of course, even higher up in the scientific excellence is you can also pitch for a European Research Council grant, and also that we fund, and because the funding is necessarily going to a European institute that would host the successful Indian researcher. So big program, almost every topic. Participation on collaboration is, of course, depending on co-funding, and therefore the areas are limited. And in areas where the Indian government would have also an interest because they fund their participation, that has been in the past, and I presume that will continue in the future, on everything to do with water stress, water management, purification of water, with energy, renewable energy. Polar sciences is an area where there's big interest from India. All the areas of health, and we hope and anticipate a lot on research to green the economy, which can go from farm to fork, or connectivity, or transport. So And through that cooperation, also Indian institutes can cooperate with German institutes, because cooperation under the European framework is always requiring participation of institutes of several member states. So the Gateway Horizon Europe is a good way also to see cooperation between India and Germany. I hope that this suffices to understand this complex way of cooperation, but just remember that our doors are open. We encourage very much cooperation with India scientists and the community, and through that cooperation, India and Germany can also strengthen their cooperation. Thank you, Katja.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you so much for this meaningful insight. And I would hand over now to Dr. Shivashi Shataram, as the DST as a co-funding scheme already has been mentioned. Could you give us in a nutshell, up to 3 minutes, an insight what is going on, how I can apply for funding for international cooperation projects? We all know that the DST is funding a lot of national projects, of course, but maybe you could give a short insight what is ongoing in matters on cooperation funding schemes with Germany. Dr. Shivashi? Dr. Shivashi, you have to unmute yourself. Okay, there seem to be some technical issues, so then maybe I would hand over to Matthias Kieselbach from the German Research Foundation, a German funding body. Maybe you could give us a short insight on what is the interest and how one can take benefit of the funding schemes of the German Research Foundation. Matthias?
Sure. Show me whether you can see me. I think you can, because I can see myself. So thanks very much for having me in this panel. I would much rather be seated next to you so I could actually see you next to me here. But this will have to do. So my name is Matthias Kieselbach. I represent the German Research Foundation in India. At the moment, I am working from Germany, but I plan to be back in India in January. So the German Research Foundation is Germany's largest funding agency. It has an annual budget of a little bit more than 3 billion euros, or 20,000 crore rupees. And we are a little bit different from other funding agencies, which you will probably have come across in your academic careers. First of all, we fund fundamental research exclusively, or actually some projects that we have application as well, but that's not going to be the reason why we fund something. We fund projects because they further science, because they are great fundamental research. So this is number one that makes us different from others. Secondly, we are politically completely independent. We are science driven, and our decision-making boards have the scientists in the majority. And finally, we normally work bottom up. So if we issue calls for proposals, that's always an exception. But it's an important exception, which we do in the Indian context, and I'll be telling you a little bit about that. We are a funding agency without thematic or discipline priorities. So we fund basically projects in all the academic fields in which you can do a PhD, from philosophy, social sciences, physics, biology, life sciences, engineering sciences, you name it, we can fund a project in it. Now, as the German, principal German funding agency, which also hands out public funds from the German government, we are charged with basically working for the German community of researchers. But the German community of researchers has asked us to help them internationalize the German research scene. And that's the reason why we have offices abroad, such as our office in Delhi, which I had, and why we have some funding schemes which are then also of interest to people across the globe, such as people like you in India. So what do we fund? So firstly, we fund projects in Germany where we basically invite people from all over the world to apply for funding and then conduct their own research projects in German research institutions. But secondly, and that's the focus of today's panel here, we fund Indo-German Research Collaboration. And I just want to mention two schemes, and then I will stop for now and leave the rest to the actual discussion. Firstly, and that's quite easy to get, we fund travel and workshops aimed at kickstarting new Indo-German collaborative research projects. We have a funding line for that, which is called Initiation of International Cooperation. So if you're interested in having a workshop funded, either in Germany or in India, we can do these in any Indian university. Workshop is aimed at starting something new, some actual research, then please come to me and I'll tell you more about it. And secondly, and more importantly, we fund actual research projects, and we do that together with our Indian partner agencies, such as the DST, and you will hear from Dr. Shivaji, who is here as well, which makes me very happy, and with the DBT and other agencies. So together with these agencies, we can fund Indo-German projects, typically of a duration of 3 years, and well-funded, with all the kinds of cost items that you typically have in them: staff, consumables, workshops, travel, you name it. This we typically do, and this is why I said initially that we do, as an exception, sometimes issue calls. We typically do that in specific calls that we publicize on our websites and on that of our partners. Currently, we are in talks with the DST about continuing mathematics, chemistry, and physics call. And we also have an ongoing scheme in the life sciences with the Department of Biotechnology. So if you're working in the life sciences, there is a scheme that's currently open. It's open until February, but we will surely, or we yeah.
Thank you, Matthias, for this short insight. And as it was already mentioned that you closely cooperate with the DST, I will hand over to Dr. Shivaji, but want to mention we are getting a lot of questions regarding individual research funding possibilities for postdoc and PhDs. This is not the topic of this session, so I would ask you to have a bit of patience. We will have a session at 2:30 where we would talk about the individual funding schemes. So we are here focusing on cooperation. And now, as the DST was already mentioned by Tanya, but also by Matthias, Dr. Shivaji, maybe you could give us a short insight into the DST funding and the possibilities with regard to Germany. Dr. Shivaji, if you would unmute yourself and give us the short insight. Please go ahead. Okay, we could see Dr. Shivaji for a minute. Dr. Shivaji, could you please unmute yourself and then be invited to give your short presentation.
Good morning to my dear German colleagues, and good afternoon to Indian colleagues. Esteemed panelists from Germany, Dr. Kassalask, Director, German Center for Research and Innovation, New Delhi, and that, and His Excellency Mr. Stefan Gabrer, Deputy Ambassador, Embassy of Federal Republic of Germany, New Delhi. My friend and colleague, Dr. Matthias Kaiselbach, Director, German Research Foundation, New Delhi, Ms. Tania Friedrichs, delegation of EU to India, Mr. Hans Westphal, DLR Germany, and all my dear colleagues and panelists in this today's meeting. So at the very outset, I would like to compliment and congratulate DWIH for organizing this very important Indo-German Research Day to basically to take stock of the various activities that we have launched over the few decades, and then some of the milestones of the exciting journey that both countries have together made so far. I'm immensely excited to be part of this deliberations today. The cooperation between India and Germany is one of the oldest, which was established in 1974, and then taken several important steps to promote the science and technology cooperation from both the countries. And now it is needless to say that the cooperation is very steady and growing stronger and stronger from day to day. In this endeavor, we had several activities launched together with cooperation of different various German funding agencies, institutionals, and individuals. DST engages basically the cooperation with international countries, about more than 45 countries. However, the Germany Science and Technology Cooperation is the most prominent and strongest as on today, because considering the highest level of cooperations among the government agencies and departments and institutions and individuals and across the disciplines. Therefore, there are plenty of opportunities and unlimited opportunities for the scientists and faculties and students from both the countries. Now, I would like to briefly touch upon various activities with both India DST and German funding agencies are engaged for the past few decades. The first and foremost is the DST and BMBF, the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, Government of Germany, and DST is the fundamental government departments, which are nodal agencies, which will support all these Indo-German collaborative activities. And it is very also timely to mention here that both DST and BMBF together have established Indo-German Science and Technology Center way back in 2010. And now the Indo-German Center also funds large number of programs in various disciplines like ICT, renewable energy, and bioeconomy, and so on and so forth. And next comes to the most important, very vibrant partnership between DST and DAD, German Academic Exchange Organization. We have started this program in 1998, and then a very large number of programs and projects are supported. So basically, this program works like the Indian and German collaborators have to formulate the proposal together and submit the projects to DST by the Indian counterparts and to DAD Germany by the German counterparts. And after the joint evaluation of the project, it will be recommended and supported by both the governments. So under this program, the faculty along with the students from both sides can visit laboratories and academic institutions in other countries and then work for about 2 years together intermittently between within this 2 years period of time. So far, large number of more than 1,000 exchange visits have been taken place under this DST DAD program. And also this program helps in connecting to very rigorously work on a specified themes. And next comes to the DST DFG cooperation. DFG German Research Foundation, my colleague Matthias has already given a brief about DFG's activities. And under the DST-DFG program, we basically support the projects with full support, manpower, as well as little consumables and other things. This project's tenure is for 3 years, and then this has been working since 2005 onwards. And basically, this program is targeted to the basic research in the field of physics, chemistry, and mathematics. And both DST and DFG are expanding their wings to go for newer activities like, as Matthias mentioned, this IRTG program, International Research Training Groups, basically to generate large number of doctoral students from both the countries of the order of 25 to 30 in their chosen area of discipline. So this works in with multi-institutional and multi-groups participation from both the countries, and will be very soon launching this program from both sides. And another important program, which is with Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, basically this is a symposia every year held once in India, and next time it will be in Germany. So far, we have organized 10 such symposia in frontiers of engineering sciences. And then these are basically to target the mid-career scientific personalities under the age of 35 years of age. And then about 30 to 40 scientific young scientists will sit together on this platform and work on topics of their chosen research for the further development of the themes. So this is very important thing, and it is supposed to be held in India this year, but due to the pandemic, will be held soon. And yet it will be a virtual platform. And also we have Max Planck Institutes. Also we have very aggressive cooperation going on. Basically, this is targeted for the people who have just been awarded the Max Planck fellowships. And then when you return to India, so they should find some platform where DST and Max Planck together will provide the support, necessary support for them. So we are now working on finer details on how to promote this kind of activities. And then I want to inform one more thing in this group. We have established a virtual center called IMPEX, Indo-German Center for Computational Sciences at IIT Delhi, and the active groups are working on this center. It's like a platform exclusively on this particular computational sciences. And most interesting for the students is we have very aggressive and active cooperation between DST and Lindau Foundation, where every year Nobel laureates meetings will be taking place in end of June in the place called Lindau in Germany. So about 600 students and about 40 Nobel laureates in different disciplines will assemble there, and it will be a very good platform for the interaction among the students, faculty, scientists, and then with Nobel laureates. So most of the students, we have been operating this program since 2001, and more than 500 Indian students were taken to participate and interact with the Nobel laureates held every year. So the students are later on will get a lot of support and fellowships to work in Germany and other places. So these are basically the programs that are being operated between DST, India, and various arms of German Federal Ministry of Education and Research. And we have been engaged very actively and very successfully. Some of the programs have led. And with this remarks, I would like to stop here and I am ready to address some of the questions by the audience. I'm also very excited to see about 600 participants are actually participating in this virtual conference. Thank you.
Dr. Shivaji, and I would request to mute yourself for the moment being, so till we come to the answers. Last but not least, it was mentioned that, and thanks for this insight into the various funding schemes you're running with different German institutions. Mentioned also the DAD, who is also offering a lot of opportunities. I would like to invite Hans Westphal, who is here on behalf of the DLR agency and the Ministry of Education. Maybe in a nutshell, a couple of programs have been mentioned. You could explain what is the perspective from the German side and could also relate to the 2+T course offered by the Indo-German Center for Sustainable Science and Technology. Hans?
Thank you, Katja. Maybe I start with a brief explanation of what a project management agency is. So in the German system, we have the policy level, that would be BMBF, and the implementation of those policies is then being implemented by the project management agencies. So we manage the calls for proposals, we manage the funding, and we also advise BMBF on certain topics. Sometimes we take over the role of a think tank. So it's a lot of tasks that we do at implementation level. So Mr. Kisselbach already told you a lot about DFG, and we are the exact opposite of DFG, if you want. So we are not bottom-up funding, but top-down funding, and we fund in priority areas of BMBF. So these might be societal challenges or all topics which would be important, for example, for the competitiveness of the German economy. And therefore, this is the main difference to GFG. So we fund through calls for proposals. DLR Project Management Agency is one of the largest project management agencies in Germany. There's a couple of others also in Jülich, in Karlsruhe. VDI, VDE is one of the agencies, so there's plenty of them. And the BMBF is more or less mirrored in these project management agencies. So the health division within BMBF would have a project management agency to carry out their policies. And we at DLR, amongst other tasks that we have or other project management agency contracts, are responsible for a large part of BMBF's international cooperation. So that, of course, also covers the cooperation with India. And I'm today here to tell you a little bit more about the funding opportunities with India. So BMBF funds unilaterally, bilaterally, and also multilaterally with India. And I would like to start with maybe the bilateral programs that we have. So the Indo-German Science and Technology Center was already mentioned. This is definitely our flagship program that we have with DST. The center is jointly financed through BMBF and DST, and our most important program is the 2+2 calls. So in these calls, we have one academic partner and one industrial partner on each side teaming up, and we fund research projects which are close to application and close to the market. What might be of interest to you is that within just a couple of days, maybe even tomorrow, we are going to launch our new call in additive manufacturing. So you can go to IGSTC's website, igstc.org, to learn more about this in the next couple of days. And IGSTC also offers workshops, but currently in the time of the COVID pandemic, this has all gone virtual, so the financial support for workshops might not be that interesting at the moment. At least the number of applications that we see is rather low. So these are some of the activities of IGSTC, but then we also, or BMBF has calls with the Department of Biotechnology. We recently had a joint call for proposals in phytotherapies. And these calls are launched on a 2-year, so every 2 years, mainly we have a call with DBT, more or less. We also have calls with the Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR, with the Indian Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, and one of the unilateral programs that I would mention are the so-called APRA projects. APRA stands for Asia Pacific Research Area, and under this unilateral initiative, we set up a research presence of a German university at a foreign university, also including India, of course. And then there's a funding program supporting German universities to apply for Horizon 2020 grants by the European Commission. So these are very competitive programs or application processes, and that's why we offer them money or support to be more successful in these calls. There's also programs by the thematic divisions within BMBF. Just to name one or two of those, there's a program called Bioeconomy International. The calls are launched every year or every 2 years, and the target country, or amongst the target countries, is also India. There's no guaranteed funding from the Indian side, but I know of it's not really a bilateral call. But I know about a couple of projects where DBT agreed to provide the funding for the Indian partners in the end. And there's then a couple of calls under BMBF's Framework Research Program, Research for Sustainable Development, or FONA. But it would be going too much into the details to name all of those programs which are open for application. And there's also the European initiatives in which BMBF is partly involved. So to name but a few, JPI Climate, and in the past there was ERANET Transformation to Sustainability, InFact ERA, and Indigo. So as you can see, there's many levels at which funding happens, yeah, I gave you a couple of examples, and I will stop here so that we have still some time left for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hans, for this insight. I think one takeaway is that that's basically based on calls and which are subject specific. But I would have a question to you. Is the German government has announced last week a substantial investment in research on sustainability, 4 billion euro, if I'm right. Do you expect any funding calls upcoming for India under that framework?
So that has to be seen, but I wouldn't wonder if some of that money also goes to international cooperation, and in particular, the sustainability topics are those that you need to tackle globally. So I think it just makes sense to act with partners, and therefore I would expect that that money also goes to international collaboration. Yes.
Thanks so much. We are getting a couple of questions in the chat. There was a question if there is a complete overview on the funding schemes available. I might take that up by myself, as the German Center for Research and Innovation is exactly working on that, and will be hopefully able in February to provide a brochure and also on the internet an overview on the funding schemes available. I would like to ask a question to Matthias. What, in your opinion, makes an application a successful application? So you have been also in the back end in the DFG working. Can you give some hints, tips to our audience here present? What should they take care of when they are into applying for a DFG funding? Matthias?
Sure, I can try. It depends, of course, it depends a lot on the kind of scheme that you're applying within. But I think the most general thing I can say about it is this. If you submit a proposal to any organization that funds research, try to put yourself mentally into the position of the reviewer that will get to read your proposal. And I'm saying this because I have a feeling that many people just don't do this. It's important. So ask yourself the question, if I were the reviewer of the proposal that I'm about to submit, what would I want to know? What exactly would I want to know? And well, the general answer is I'd want to really understand the project. I want to understand the question that it deals with. I want to understand that the applicant knows the area and the literature that they are contributing to, and that they have identified a good question. I'd want to know what exactly is the methodology, the method that the applicant proposes to employ. I'd want to know who is the applicant, why do they think that they have what it takes to complete the research. And of course, I'd want a very exact work plan that's broken down perhaps to individual work packages or 3 months sections with landmarks and with all kinds of details. So that's the general answer. Of course, depending on the different schemes that are possible, there could be more specific answers. For Indo-German projects, and I'll stop after this, I would say make it very clear which PI is doing what work and how the different work packages of the different PIs, the Indian and the German, and perhaps there's another one, how they hang together. How the results of one work package feeds into the next work package, who does what, when do they do it, how do you collaborate. So this is another general sort of lesson, be as specific as you can. And let me just say one final thing is, before you submit the proposal, make sure you understand what kind of reviewer that will be. Are you writing to a sort of a general audience, or are you writing to a very to a researcher who's very close to your field? That may differ depending on the funding scheme which you apply to. But of course, you'd want to tune your text to the person who will likely review it. Yeah, some general ideas from me.
Yes, for this insight. I would have a question. There are coming a lot of questions in regarding also selection procedures and so on. And maybe Dr. Shivaji, as the DST is in such a lot of co-funded programs. So how is the selection procedure? Is there going to be a selection on the German side and Indian side and then a joint commission, or how one has to imagine the selection of the jointly funded research projects? So if you could unmute yourself and maybe shortly relate to that question. As Dr. Shivaji obviously has some technical issues. Maybe Hans, you could take that up on, as you're running also co-funded schemes under the 2+2 scheme in the Indo-German Center for Science and Technology.
Disturbance going on.
So now, I think now you can speak, Dr. Sivaji. Now you're audible. Sivaji, can you hear us?
Please go ahead. You're visible and audible. Would you just answer the question, please? Okay, probably Hans, you take it up, and then we see maybe after your short insight.
So there's different evaluation procedures. So under IGSTC and the 2+2 calls, we have a joint scientific committee, which is composed of around 5 experts per site, and depending on the topic of the joint call for proposals and the subtopics, they have the suitable expertise to evaluate the proposals. They will have to agree on well, a final result for each proposal, and then they create a ranking list of those proposals. That's one way an evaluation can work, but we also have other calls under which each side does their own evaluation, and then in the end you have lists that you compare, and then you see what the results are, where you have overlaps, and which projects can then be taken up for funding. So there's not just one way to evaluate a project. We have different procedures depending on the partner organizations.
Oh, thank you, Hans. We have a question coming in regarding the Horizon Europe or Horizon 2020 funding. So Tanya, this goes to do is could you explain a bit how can I find out about these common calls? And the second question would be, is you have an idea what is upcoming under the new Horizon program? Are there any topics you already see where there is a potential co-funding on the Indian side, or what are the topics where is a lot of focus on besides the Green Deal? So maybe you could relate a bit to that, Tanya.
Thank you very much. Yes, under the Horizon 2020, currently we have ongoing calls to underpin the EU strategy on Green Deal, and that includes calls, as I mentioned before, but what I didn't say is that these calls are still running. Deadline is 26th of January on farm to fork, on renewable energy, biodiversity. All that information you can find on the website of the EU delegation in Delhi. Also, you can find it on the general portal of Horizon 2020. So yes, specific calls still open for application with India and co-funding from the Department of Biotechnology. So that is, of course, that other important dimension. Apart from that, under Horizon 2020, I would like to say the party is over because the program ends this end of the year. We are preparing Horizon Europe. There, although our calls are not bottom up, you can almost say that we fund also every societal challenge and also a lot of research for our competitiveness. The focus will be everything related to digitalization, repurposing industry to make it more resilient. Health will be a very important topic, and also, again, everything that is linked to what we call the Green Deal, and that can be on agri-tech food. For example, I see that Equisat asked, we are interested in the field of agriculture, nutrition, plenty of calls on that topic. There will be many calls on energy, renewable energy, batteries, e-vehicles. But again, will there be provided by the government of India, and that is too early to say what they will co-fund. That we hope to announce when also our calls will be published in April 2021. Always the same avenue to learn about it, either the portal of the program itself, Horizon Europe, and of course very regularly updated targeted information on the website of the delegation of the European Union in India. What is bottom up, and I saw some questions for postdoc for fellowships, there it's your topic, but you need to find a university in Europe that is interested in having you as a postdoc scholar on your topic.
So much for this outlook on the funding, and I think that's something which would be interested also for our audience what the DST is up to, if they already have an idea where the co-funding will take place, and maybe we give it another try. Ms. Dr. Shivaji, just please unmute yourself, and then we could hear you. Shivaji, please go ahead. Okay, obviously there are a couple of problems in the back end. So maybe I would like to ask a very specific question to Matthias, as you're working for the DFG, and we're getting in a lot of questions related to different subjects, finding a cooperation partner. So if I look in a specific field for a cooperation partner, and I know that you're running a very interesting portal, maybe you could just tell us a bit what the DFG has to offer here if one looks who's doing research in which field and is looking for a cooperation partner.
Sure. I get this question a lot as well. So people hear about the funding schemes that we offer. I'm sure this is also true for Tanya, I guess. They hear about the funding schemes and then they say, well, that sounds interesting to me. Can you please suggest a partner in Germany or in Europe, for that matter, who I could collaborate with to then access these funds? And there are a couple of answers to this. The first main answer from DFG is, actually, as a matter of policy or funding philosophy, we do not suggest individual researchers or institutes to collaborate with, because our philosophy is bottom up. We take it that the activity has to come from the communities themselves. And then people come to us rather than us suggesting who to do something with or what to work on. So this is sort of an important point. And also, I think that if I suggested to you somebody, usually that I don't expect that would lead to a lasting research collaboration. What you do rather is start with the scientific literature, read what people write. And if you find that there is somebody who works on exactly the same thing that you are working on, or something that's interlocking with what you are working on, that's complementary to it, then you have a contact that can lead to a stable and productive collaboration. So this is, I think, the way to go. Start to collaborate with people in that way, rather than asking administrators to name individual researchers. We're not really in the position. Having said this, though, there are, of course, databases that you could access. So I say this again. There are, of course, databases that you could access. And one such database is called GERIT, GERIT.org. GERIT.org. That's a database of all the institutions and also individual researchers active in Germany and in particular topics.
Thank you, Matthias, very much for this insight on and for the hint for the platform Gerrit.org. Our panel comes slowly to an end, and I would like to finish maybe with one sentence by each panelist. Cooperation in 2021. Where are we heading? And maybe Tanya, you kick it off. So what is your final thought on this Indo-German Research Cooperation in 2021? One sentence. Can you hear me? Okay, then I hand over the question to Hans.
Our research cooperation in 2021, I think it's basically then the post-COVID pandemic time where everything will first go back to normal, and as many of our projects will have to speed up a little bit. This will definitely be a busy year, at least the second half of the year, but we will all be glad to be back to travel again and to meet the project partners in person again. So I'm really looking forward to 2021 and to be back in India again.
Hans, so Tanya, maybe over to you. Indo-German Research Cooperation in 2021. Where will be the 3rd of November 2021? Obviously, we have some difficulties. So maybe Matthias, your final thought on that?
I have a final thought. I have a final sentence. So 2021, I think it's now time to go from small projects into large consortia. And I am happy to say that we are planning to issue our first big calls for Indo-German research training groups with the DST, and similar large schemes will probably also be launched with the DBT. Fingers crossed.
Good news. So going from small to large. I don't know if Tanya could hear me. We give it a last try on 2021.
I think that
I think you are now looking for some.
It's good.
because it is
Working. We see you.
replying.
Yeah.
Maybe just take it over, Tanya. We've seen you, but maybe you answer the question in the networking loud. And just our time comes to the end. So I want to thank first of all, to you, our panelists, for this very insightful and explanation on how the funding mechanism is working, where we are heading, and what are the upcoming topics and what are the trends for 2021. So we've learned a lot about how the funding is going, that there are a lot of opportunities. I would like to invite everybody who has been here in the audience to the network lounge and to the fair. The institutions which are here on the panel are present with a booth. You can find more about the detailed programs. There were a lot of questions, detailed questions related to the programs, the funding programs. Take the opportunity and meet the representatives at the booth. We are here another 4 hours. So thank you to the audience for the questions. If you want to find out more on individual funding, please stay with us for the next panel. So it was my pleasure to host this very interesting panel. I think Indo-German Research Cooperation is is increasing. There are a lot of upcoming new exciting projects. There were just mentioned some calls upcoming. So I hope we could provide you some useful information. If you have further questions, please connect us, use the platform today, or connect the German Center for Research and Innovation. We are there for you. Maybe also take a look at the website of the German Center for Research and Innovation, dvhnewdelhi.org. There you can find exciting events in the next year. We are looking into AI for SDGs. Green Deal is the topic we are taking up, and we have a large international conference running on the topic Cities and Climate, 16th and 17th of March. So have a look, and there you also could find out wonderful and information about exciting ongoing research and a couple of events which the DVH will provide in 2021. So take care. Stay with us today. Thank you for joining the session. Thank you again to the panelists, and thank you again also to the audience, and thanks for your questions again.